Welcome to this screencast on developing with the Microsoft Graph. Let me first talk a little bit about what this screencast is and what you can expect from it before we start diving into the content. This screencast is going to accompany a hands-on lab and a training module that you can take advantage of that goes along with everything you're going to find in this screencast. Specifically, you're going to find in this screencast is really going to be an example of someone presenting the content from the training module as a way for you to learn how you could use this module and delivering it to a different user group or at a conference. However, you can also use it as self-paced learning. Now, the way that this module is set up is that it's broken up into a series of a couple different sections. We'll go through each one of them in just a few minutes. Each one of these sections is going to finish with a demonstration. Now, the demonstration, we don't walk through the entire step of creating the application or walking through the steps of writing all the code. Instead, we look at the final solution that has already been built and kind of pick through the code and pick through the important parts that you should take advantage of or you need to take note of. And we'll see it working as well. If you want to go through and you want to build the application, you want to see how it's being built, then what we would recommend that you do is go check out the hands-on lab that accompanies this module. Because the hands-on lab, each of the exercises maps to one of the demos inside of this screencast that you're going to see. So if you want to see how to build it and you want to walk through the steps, you can walk through the hands-on lab exercise that accompanies this module and get to the exact same place that we're showing you here in the screencast. Instead, we're not going to show in the screencast all the individual steps of creating the application. And part of that is because things change on a rapid cadence, and the lab is going to have the most updated steps and dependencies and stuff that you're going to need. The screencast is more or less showing you how the thing works or how the final solution works. So that's how you can learn more about taking advantage of this content and how we've structured this. Let's go ahead and dive into the actual module itself. In this module, we're going to see how you can create smart user interfaces by leveraging the Microsoft Graph. And we're going to do that by using different components that are provided to us from the Office UI Fabric and the Fabric React project. In this first section, we're going to talk about two specific things. We're going to talk about the file picker from OneDrive and the Office UI Fabric pickers that are provided to us as well. The file picker from OneDrive gives us a really good experience for selecting files from our existing OneDrive. Microsoft provides an SDK for multiple platforms for both web and JavaScript, Android, and the Universal Windows Platform, or UWP. The OneDrive Personal and OneDrive for Business experiences are both supported using this control. The file open experience is going to allow you to set the initial location. It's going to allow you to filter in or out specific file types and include or exclude metadata. And then once you've selected a file, it'll then list out or provide back to you the name of the file and the URL where you can get it as well, or the web view. And then once you've selected a file, you can then get the name of the file and the URL for where you can download it or view it using the web experience. You also have a file save experience, which allows a user to select a specific file on where or folder where you want to save the file, and then it will return information about that file once it has been saved. The Office UI Fabric also provides different picker experiences, and what these are React controls that are implemented using the Office UI Fabric CSS and styles. These things are all styled like the rest of the Office 365 suite. So you're going to be able to create an experience that looks very familiar to your Office 365 users. So a couple of different pickers that we have. We have a people picker. We're going to use that one in the demo. This one allows you to have multiple styles of selecting and displaying people, and it also provides events to customize or filter choices and selections so that you can filter in or out specific users or groups of users and resources. There's also a date picker that you can use to select a date with optional boundaries and formatting options. And then you've also got a color or a color swatch picker where you can choose or enter a specific color code or also choose from a predefined set of colors. So in this first demo, what we're going to do is we're going to take an existing project that we've already created that's going to handle a lot of the hard stuff. It's going to handle all the stuff about giving us data from the Microsoft Graph. And it already has all of the authentication stuff already configured or mostly configured. That's going to be our first step, is to go create the application in Azure AD and grant it the necessary permissions. And then we're gonna have to grab the necessary information from Azure AD and update our existing project. Now, what this is going to allow you to do is to focus just on using these Smart UI components or creating a Smart UI with these components that are provided from the Office UI Fabric and the Fabric React control. And then we're going to show you or kind of emphasize how we can integrate data coming from the Microsoft Graph to make this a better experience for your end users. So let's go ahead and dive into the first demo. In this first demo, we are going to start by taking an existing starter project that has already been built with a lot of stuff that's already in it, and we're going to update it throughout this entire screencast to show different pickers and different cards and stuff that we can use with the Microsoft Graph. But first, before we get started with this, we need to have a way to be able to authenticate and log into the Microsoft Graph. The first thing that we're going to do then is we're going to go over to our Azure Active Directory admin portal. I've done that by going to aad.portal.azure.com, and we're going to create a new application. So the application, we're going to go over here and say new registration, and we'll call this the Graph Smart UI. And I'm going to select that we want accounts in any org directory and personal accounts, such as Microsoft accounts, as the people who can log in and use our application. Now, once I've done that, I'm then going to come over here and create some redirect URIs. Now, there are a couple different redirect URIs that I'm going to want to define here, and it all is listed inside of a lab. All of these are listed inside of a lab that accompanies the training module that this screencast is associated with. So the first one we're going to use is this sign in OIDC link. The next one that we're going to use is one pointing to a picker file that we're going to use when we want to work with OneDrive. And then the last one is going to be working with another callback that we're going to create that's going to deal with the Azure AD callback. So we have these three that are listed. Now, it's important that we use the specific port numbers here because the starter project that we provide you inside the lab is configured to use this port number when it spins up. Now, once I've done that, the next thing I need to do is to go down here to the implicit grant settings because everything is going to be done through client-side based authentication. And so when you do that, you're going to be using the implicit grant OAuth flow. And I'm going to tell it that to enable this, I'm going to turn on the fact that I want access tokens and ID tokens to both be returned back to me. So we'll go ahead and save our changes. And now I'm also going to come back and to our client, our certificates and secrets, and I'm going to create a new secret. So I will come over here and I'll call this my 1 year secret, and I'll go ahead and add it. Now, when this gets created, it only shows it to me one time, so I'm going to need to grab this value. Let me jump over here to my Visual Studio project, and let me open up the app settings.json file, and you'll see we have a bunch of things that we're going to have to fill in here, and one of those is the client secret. You'll also notice that there's the callback for one of the URLs that we specified just a minute ago. And here's the base URL for our site that we're going to be working with. So let's grab that client secret and let's save it to make sure we don't lose it. So I'll copy that, come over here to the Visual Studio project, and I will paste that in. Let's grab the other stuff that we need right now too. So let's grab the client ID. So I can do that by coming back to the home page for the application, and I'll go grab the client ID, which is also known as the application ID. And we'll paste that in. I also need the tenant ID, so I'll copy that in as well. And then we also need the domain for our application. And the easy way to grab this is if you just go back to the homepage for your entire Azure AD. So go to Azure AD and you're on Overview, and you'll see that listed right here. So I'll go ahead and grab that value as well. And we'll paste that in right here. And save our changes. So we're good there. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and grant our application some permissions. So I'm going to come back over to the application that we created under App Registrations, and I'm going to select the Graph Smart UI app, and I'm going to go to API permissions. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the add a permission. I'm going to specify I want a Microsoft Graph permission, and then I'm going to say I want to create a delegated permission. So I'm going to go ahead and select delegated permissions. And then I'm going to search for two additional permissions that I don't have yet. One is the directory.read.all, And then one is going to be the group read.all. Select that, and then I'll go ahead and add both of those permissions, and when the page reloads, we should see both of our permissions have been granted over here. The consent we haven't set up yet. That'll be done when we do our very first login. So let's come back over here to our Visual Studio project, and I'm going to verify with the project settings that it is set to the base URL is the 44395. So let's go ahead and right click on this and go to Properties, and on the Debug tab, if we scroll down, I will see that the SSL endpoint is 44395. So we're in good shape. So let's test out our application to make sure that we can log in and we get the experience that we are expecting. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up. It's going to open up my default browser, which in this case looks like Chrome. So I'm going to go ahead and select this account here, and we're going to have to put in the password for our account that we were logged into in just a minute ago. I've been where I was working inside of Azure AD. It can be any account really, because I'm only granting permissions to this specific user. Now notice here it's asking to be able to read the groups and read directory data, and then signing in to read the profile. So all that stuff looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and say accept. There we go. So we're in good shape. Now there's one more thing that's asking us. Reading groups that from the tenant is going to require administrative consent. That's got to be performed via a specific common consent endpoint. So if I click on this link here, this will take me to where I can specify the account or specify the link that I want to log in here. So I'm going to go ahead and log in again. And what you'll see is it's asking for permissions on behalf of my organization, which is a little more permissive. You have to be logged in with a global tenant admin to be able to do this. And now you can see that now when we've logged in, we now are getting a different experience here, so we don't have to deal with the admin consent anymore. So we're in good shape. Now let's go ahead and let's stop the app, and let's go add in some support for being able to pick files from OneDrive. So OneDrive provides file pickers for both the Android platform and for JavaScript. And in this demo, we're going to be working with just on the JavaScript side. So the file picker is going to require a special control that the user can use to invoke the picker. But you also are going to have a callback page that's going to be set up to receive the requested information from OneDrive. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the callback page by performing the next few steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my webroot folder, and inside of the webroot, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a new file. So I'm going to go over here, say add a new item, and this is going to be an HTML page. So I'll just say this is HTML, and the name of this file, I'm going to call this file the OneDrive file picker callback.html. Now once I do that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to replace the contents of this with the following code that you see. Now what this is doing is, this is the script file here. This is being provided by the OneDrive team, and what this is doing is, this is the thing that's going to be doing, it's going to be pulling the information back that's being sent from the OneDrive login and picker request, and it's going to save that information in the browser that we can then use on a future page. So we got that file all set up. We'll save our changes, and now we can go ahead and close it. Now let's come over here to our views, and let's look at the picker index.chtml file. Now in this file here, what I want you to take notice of is right about here on line 16, notice that we have in this button it says select from OneDrive, we have this method here called launch from the OneDrive, launch the OneDrive picker. Well, if I scroll down a little bit farther, we have a section here for scripts, and what this scripts section it needs to contain in it is that function for launching the OneDrive picker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to paste in some code that I pulled from the lab and that we provide you. And again, the lab is associated, is inside the hands-on lab for this exercise or this demo is found inside of the training module that is associated with this screencast. So if you want to walk through all these same steps that I'm doing or see the final built solution, go check out the training module associated with this screencast. So what does this do? So this is just adding some JavaScript to the page, and I've got a new function called launch OneDrive picker that we saw as being called above. We're grabbing the client ID out of the settings that are being provided back to us through the MVC infrastructure. And this is the client ID of our Azure AD app that we set inside the appsettings.json file. I'm then setting some options up to where I'm defining all the different settings that I want for my OneDrive picker. And then in the success method, once I've selected a file and I click the open button, I'm going to grab the files collection. I'm going to look at the first value that came back, and I'm going to grab the name and the file path, and I'm simply going to write those out to a page somewhere, or to a div somewhere on the page. And then at the very end, we're going to open up the OneDrive picker and pass in those options. So let's see this in action. So what I'm going to do is come back over here and go ahead and fire this up. Now, when I start this, I'm not going to have to log in again, or I probably won't have to log in again, because it remembers I was logged in from the previous session. I never logged out. All right, so now once the application is loaded, I'm going to come over here to Pickers. And from here, I have this select from OneDrive. Now notice I have no file name and no download URL that's been specified. So I'm going to pick select from OneDrive. What that's going to do is that's going to open up the dialog. Now in this case here, it's not loading, and we can't see why it isn't. So let's take a look and see if we can figure out what's going on by looking at the dev tools. And it says OneDrive is not defined. And I think I know what the problem is. If I come back over here, and so we can see that we're calling OneDrive, that's not defined, and I think I know why. It's because we forgot to add in a script reference to pull the OneDrive library in to the page. So let's go ahead now, we'll save our changes, come back to the page, and we'll now refresh the page. So let's refresh it. And now if I go to select from OneDrive, I should see the pop-up is going to show up, and I should get the picker experience. Now, the picker does require some special or some additional permissions, and you see it's asking me to log in because I may not have those permissions just yet, and sure enough, I don't. I don't have the permission that needs to read all files that I have access to. So I have to grant it permission to do that. And now it's going to go through this little redirect process, and you'll watch in the URL. You should see somewhere in the URL, there we go. There's our OneDrive picker callback just a minute ago. So things are, let's see, wait for this, all the login and stuff to finish. Redirecting, now we can see we're going over to my OneDrive, and here we go. So let's go find a library here that's got some files. Documents, here we go, we'll take this. We'll do the blog post review. Now, because of the way the screen real estate is set up here for the recording, there's a button down here. It's kind of hard to see, but it says open down here. So I'm going to select this open button now that I have this thing selected, and we should see, there we go, we got it. So there, we can see the file name and the URL where this was defined. All right, so we're in pretty good shape. So now let's go ahead and let's stop the browser. And we have another thing that we're going to want to add. Now, the Office UI Fabric provides a people picker component that's written in React, and you can get more information about this if you look at the links that are provided inside the training module that's associated with this screencast. Now, the starter project is already pre-configured to use React, and it follows a lot of the principles of the utility that a lot of people use to create React apps, which is the Create React App utility. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to extend this existing application to use the sample people picker from the Office UI Fabric. So what we're going to do is come over here to the components folder, and inside the components folder, I'm going to create a new file here. So I'm going to add a new item, and this is going to be a TypeScript JSX file, or really a TSX file. So I'll choose TypeScript TSX, and I'm going to call this file the people picker example data. All right, so there's my example data. Now, we provide you, in these lab files, we provide you a sample file that we can use in here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our people picker example data, and I'm going to take all of the contents from this file and copy it, and we're going to put it inside right here. So all this is just a giant array of people using the iPersona prop. So just a bunch of properties here that we have that are already defined. Now, once I've done that, I need to also create another file here, and this is going to be another TSX file, and this is going to be called the people picker. People picker TSX file. So let me grab that as well. Grab the contents for that from the lab files that we have. And we'll grab the contents of this, and I will also paste those in to we have inside of our people picker file as well. Now, if I scroll up a little bit here, actually not in this file, let's come back over here to the picker index.cshtml, and if we look inside of this file, we will see about line 25, we've got the React people picker right here. This is the location on the page which the control is going to be rendered in. So now what I need to do now is I need to go through and load that. So inside of the scripts section, what I'm going to do is right down here, right before the ending script tag, right here, I'm going to say app.render people picker like so. Now, the other thing I need to do is if I scroll up here to the very top, now the next thing I need to do is there's another file that we have in our project called boot.tsx that we have inside of the components. So boot.tsx, and this is going to contain a bunch of stuff to get how React is being loaded onto the page. And what you see here is I already have a reference to that people picker control that we just added. So what I need to do is just uncomment that out, and what that will do is now that will load our people picker control that we have. Now, there's another method on here, scroll down a little bit, called render people picker. So that's the method that we were just calling a second ago. So what I need to do is I need to tell React to render out the people picker control, and that's going to be rendered out to document.getElementById, the React people picker, and that's the div where this is being done. Now, this is where it's going to be rendered out. So this render people picker is going to be rendered out into this method or into this div that we see right here on our index.cshtml, our default view for the pickers page. And in addition, it's being loaded, or we're loading that control by calling the app.renderPeoplePicker. So let's see this in action. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up the project again. And now the project's loaded, let's go back to our pickers page. And what we should see now is in the people picker, once I select this text box here, I should see, there we go, we have a list of all of our people that were showing up, and I can even start doing some searches for it. Like I can type in VAL and I can see a sort of my sample users that are coming back. So these are demo users that are coming from that control. So that's pretty cool. You can use these different UI, Office UI Fabric controls and pickers to select files from OneDrive and to also use the people picker as well. In this second section, we're going to extend our existing application by looking at a couple additional Fabric cards that we can create. I'm going to talk about the persona or the facepile card, the documents and activity card, and the hover card as well. And in the demo, we're going to add a few other capabilities to our components. So let's start with the persona or the facepile. So the persona is the one you see there at the top. The facepile is what you see at the bottom. We can use this to represent users within our content. We have the option to use various sizes for specific purposes, and Microsoft does provide some practices for making sure that you are consistent with the rest of how Office 365 uses their different layouts and controls. You're also going to be focused on user information. That's what the persona card is all about. So you're going to see a picture, an avatar of the user in this little circle box. Of course, if they don't have the picture that's been set, then we use their initials. So this would, in our case here, it would have an A and an L in the picture there. And then it's going to show things like the name or the title and the department of the user, and then also some presence information as well. So we can see that this person is in a meeting, and we can also see that they're marked as busy or do not disturb by the little red indicator. Now, these are often used in document and hover cards. It's going to allow you to show contextual information about your end users. So if you hover over a user, like if I had hover over one of the pictures in the face pile component that you see at the bottom, it may do a little hover card, which that hover card includes the persona inside of it. So that would give me a nice little experience here. Now the document card also has multiple parts associated with it as well. We can use just the pieces that we need. You have the ability to put a preview section or a preview image for the image. You can put a logo in there, you can put a title in there, and you can also even put the card location where you can say, you know, this is coming from the view library, and then a URL to where you can actually find that. We can put things like actions in this card so that things going across the bottom of the card, and I click on different things to be able to use those, and a status as well. You also have a compact version that you can use of the document card when your screen real estate does not give you a ton of options or a lot of space. So here's what a hover card looks like. This is going to show supplemental information in context. It's going to provide a compact and expanded selections that allows you to avoid putting too much information at first for your user and not overwhelm them. You can also have complete control over the experience. So you can have things like callbacks that are set up for when the card is opened or closed or rendering. And you've also got properties that you can define for things like how it's spaced out, what the direction of the hover card is, like vertical or horizontal, and the size of the card. Should it be a smaller card or a very large card? So in this next demo, what we're going to do is we're going to implement a document card. And we're going to take something that we had built in the previous demo, and we're going to convert it over to a document card and show you how things can have a much nicer little reusable experience using these cards. In the previous demo in this screencast, you saw how we took a starter project and we started to make some changes to it in order to add the capability to add a OneDrive picker and to also add in a people picker as well. Now in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to add various cards from the Office UI Fabric to the application. This application is going to read group information, so we need to make sure we run it as a tenant administrator, a global tenant admin, and not just a regular user, because only the global tenant admin is going to have access to everything, or that's going to at least remove some of the challenges in terms of filtering and security trimming. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to add a persona card to the banner. So this app has a banner at the top of every page. So what we're going to do is add a persona card to that banner showing the currently logged in user. So the complete banner can be found in this file that we've provided here inside of the starter project. So let's take a look at what now the existing banner project file that we have in our project is found inside components and then banner.tsx. So it doesn't have all of the stuff that we want, but we take a look at the file that we're going to add to it. A couple things I want you to notice here. So notice in the import statement, we've gone through and we've added in a bunch of stuff for the persona control that we've gone ahead and we've added in. Now inside of the banner class for this component, we have a method here called render. And what render is, that's the part of the React control that is going to render out our application. So one of the other things that you see here is that we have a method that we've defined inside of the class called the getPersonaStyles. And what this does is this is going to go through and set up a couple CSS styles for our component. And notice we have things like the text content, primary text, and secondary text. And what that is that here has been defined inside of our project. So now you can see, or inside of the persona component. So here's the persona component. I've gone through and I'm going to go through and add all of this stuff to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy out this banner.tsx file. I'm going to come back over to our Visual Studio project, and in the banner.tsx, I'm going to replace the existing one with the new one that contains the stuff for the persona card. So I'm going to go ahead and save my changes and run the project. And we're going to go and wait for it to build and then spin up the web server and launch the project or launch the site inside of the browser. And now what you can see, I've already logged in, but here's where we just added that persona card. It's got the image, if I had an image set up for the user we're currently using, and I've got the name and the email address for the current user. So that's pretty cool. Now, another thing that we have is that this application has a page that's going to display all of the Office 365 groups in our tenant. So that's this groups page over here. If I select a group, it's going to open up a panel with the title off to the right-hand side. So here, if I select this, you can see the panel that shows things like marketing campaigns, or if I close it and pick Leadership Connection, it shows Leadership Connection. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to add some information about the recent group activity using document cards. This is a complete set of the cards for the group, can all be found inside of my sample project as well. So you can see here's all these different cards that we have access to. So let's come over here and let's look at inside of our project. Let me stop the project for a sec. And we can look at the group details. So in the group details, we're going to want to make a bunch of changes to this. Now, what I'm going to do, let's come back over here and let's take a look inside of the project, and let's see what stuff's going to get added. We're going to add a whole bunch of stuff up here, up the import statement here. And what this is all going to do is going to import a bunch of references we need from the Office UI Fabric to create the document card control. And then inside of the class for our React component here, we have a method here called the get mailbox. Let's see, where is this? We have a method that we've created called the get mailbox activity that you see right here. And what this does is this is going to render out the most recent conversations for this group using a document card. And then the render method, right here, the render method is going to use the group details. In the group details class is going to have a return statement that's going to render out our document card and our group card control. So let's go ahead and let's take all of this and copy it and paste it inside of the group card right here. So inside Visual Studio, we're going to open up our group details.tsx file. And this is just a basic one that's just showing the title. So we're going to make a bunch of changes to this. First step, we're going to add a bunch of import statements to this. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in a bunch of import statements. And so what this does is this is pulling in all the stuff that we're going to need from the Office UI Fabric to implement the document cards. Now, the next thing that we're going to need to do is I'm going to want to create a method here, and that method is going to go fetch all of the current mailbox activity or the recent mailbox activity for the current group. So what I'm going to do is come down to my class for group details. I'm going to add in a new method here. And this new method is called get mailbox activity. So what this is doing is it's creating a new document card and adding up a bunch of stuff for our for the mailbox activity. Now, this is going to be returned back as a JSX element, which technically is just a React control that we can add to the page. So the last step we need to do now is we need to render this out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find my render method down here at the bottom, and let's change the return statement. Instead of just writing out the title, we're going to have it return our get mailbox activity control. And so let's give this a shot. So I'm going to go over here and save our changes and run the project. And now I'm going to come over here to the groups page inside of our project. Now it's loaded, and now let's go to marketing campaigns. So if I select marketing campaigns and we give this a second to go fetch information from the group, we now see a new card show up that's got some information about the latest conversation from the marketing campaigns group. And if I come over here to say Leadership Connection, same thing. I get a card that's going to show up and show me some information from that as well. Okay, let's go make some additional changes to this. So I'm going to leave the project running. And what we're going to do now is I want to go update this again, our component again, our group details component, and add some additional information to show some stuff about some other things that are coming from the group as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in a bunch of code. Now what this is, what this method is going to be doing, let's come over here and we'll add this in. I'll explain what's going on. What this does is this method is called the get library activity. And this is going to generate another JSX control. So what the get library activity method is going to do is it's going to display all of the most recently updated documents in the group library. And I've also got a little utility method down here that I added in as well about getting icon properties. So that's just going to set the different icon properties. If it's like a folder, it's going to show the folder icon. Otherwise, it'll show a default icon as well. Now I need to go down to the render method and use this new control. So let me scroll back down here to our render method, and we're going to update the render method so that now it's going to go fetch all of the library information and the mailbox information, and it's going to write out the activity for the group now as both the library activity and the mailbox activity as well. And then it's going to render all of that stuff out onto the page. So let's give this a shot. We'll now save our changes here, go back to our project, and let's refresh the page. Here we go. When I select the HR group, we can now see the HR group is listing out both all the latest documents. So here's the latest documents from that group, and here are the latest conversations. Now, not everyone is going to have both of these controls. Like, for example, my marketing campaigns may not have any documents. In this case here, it only has conversations. We don't have any documents in its document library. But my HR one, as you saw a second ago, my HR one did. So cool. So in this demo, what you saw is how to add in document cards to show some information about the currently selected items. In this last section, we're going to yet again extend our application, but this time we're going to implement something called an adaptive card. So let's see what an adaptive card is. Adaptive cards are nice because we can do lots of different things with them. First of all, they're portable and expressive, which gives us a rich palette to express content across apps, devices, and UI frameworks. And it's also going to allow us to have content and controls that adapt to the host application. So if we're in a browser experience or on a tablet experience, things just work in a much better experience there. The nice thing about an adaptive card is that it's just one schema with shared tooling. So you're going to get a single format that's going to minimize the cost of creating a card and maximizing the number of places where it can be used. And one of the nice things about adaptive cards as well is that there's no code that's really needed or even allowed. Content is delivered in a very safe payload, so you don't have to open up your UI framework to do any raw markup and any scripting for the adaptive card. So what we're going to see in this last section is we're going to implement an adaptive card for doing a couple different things in our application. You're going to see how it looks a little bit different and works differently from what the document card was, or it's kind of implemented the same way, but you'll see how it works because we're going to compare it and use both the document card for the group details that we had earlier in the last demo, and then you're going to see some information about the group itself inside of its own document card. So let's go ahead and dive into that demo. In this last demo for this screencast, I'm going to show you how we can update the existing application we've been working with so far to leverage adaptive cards. So we're going to use the adaptive cards to render out some more information about the group. So what I'm going to do now is I want to find a file called in the controller section right here called the groups data controller, group data controller right here. So what I want to do is there's a method in here called the create group card. So let me go ahead and select that. And what you'll see here is this is really just stubbing out basically an empty card. So what I want to do is I want to replace the contents of this entire card to do something a little bit more impressive. So let's go through and let's take this and we'll replace it with something new. Now, what is this one going to do? If you take a look at this method here, what we're doing here is we're creating a new group card. But what we're going to do now is define adaptive containers and column sets. So what this does then is we check to see, is there a picture? And if there is, we're going to display it. We'll add it to the card. But then I'm going to go through and do some additional stuff with the card by setting some text, adding that text item to it, creating another set of items or another text block here to have some description about the item as well. And then we have some other stuff here, like we have a fact container and we also have a fact set. So these are going to show different things like classifications for the group. We'll show the visibility for the group, the type of the group, when it was created, the policy, the renewed state. But it's just a much more robust and impressive looking card than what we had before. Now, once I've done that, what we're going to have to do is we need to go through and update some of the UI so that this looks a little bit better as well. So I'm going to come over here to my components and I'm going to add in a new item, and this is going to be a SAS file. So we'll create our SAS file here, and this is going to be called the group card. Now, I've already got the code for that defined somewhere else inside the sample files that we provide you. So I'll go ahead and paste that in. And then I also need to define a group card component. This is going to be a new React component or TSX file. So we'll just do a search for JSX. It's going to be a TypeScript file, and then this is going to be called the group card.tsx. And for that one, we will go find that file and just copy the entire card and paste him in as well. Just use this React control. Now, if I come back over here to my group details component that we used earlier, I want to go through and use that new React control that we just created, or that we just defined with the group card. So what I'm going to do over here is we'll come in and we'll add in an import statement. We're going to import the group card, and we're going to import that from the group card, like so. And then we got to find our render method inside of this. So let's find our render method. So let's find our render method. It should be close to the bottom probably. There it is. And we're going to let's find our return statement that we have right down here. And I'm going to modify this to have the group information. Now we're going to use an adaptive card instead of using the document cards that we used before. We'll call this the group information. And then we are instead going to render out a document card. And inside that document card, we're going to render out our group card and specify the group is equal to this.props.group, the one that we fetched previously. So that's going to have a much better rendering for it. So now let's save our project, and now let's rerun this. Okay, now that this is running, let's come back over to our groups and let's select the group that's got a bunch of information in it. So now we're going to select, I'm going to go back and select the HR group because that had a lot of stuff in it last time. When I select it, you can see that our panel on the right-hand side has changed. It's showing group information, and now we're using these adaptive cards, which has a bunch of information about the card or about the group itself. And I think I might have gotten a little too aggressive here. I think we actually lost our other stuff at the bottom that we should have seen, which, let's scroll back down to our render method. And it did. We forgot to include all the activity that we had created last time. So let's put that in right after our document card and save our changes. And let's go back to the browser and refresh the page because we should have seen some information here about the conversations and the documents for that group. All right, now let's select the HR group again. We should see our adaptive card show up first, and then we would see our activity come in right below it. So, there we go. Now we're expecting what we saw. So we got the group information about the group. So here's a little description for it using our adaptive card. And then a little bit farther down, these are our two other cards that we created for the documents and for the latest conversations in the group. So in this demo, you saw how to extend this panel off to the side with some additional information, both showing data coming from the group, being fetched from the group using a document card, as well as how to use an adaptive card. Now we've reached the end of this screencast for this module. You've seen a lot about how to do development with the Microsoft Graph based on the topic that we've covered here. Keep in mind that everything you saw here inside the screencast accompanies a training module where you can find slides and hands-on labs and all the final solutions that we showed you in the demos inside this screencast. So if you want to learn more, I'd recommend you check out the module associated with this screencast. Again, if you remember, the demonstrations that we showed you in this screencast, they don't walk you through every single step of building the application. Rather, we just look at the final solution that we've built and we see it running, which you can expect to see. If you want to see how to go about building a solution just like this, go look at the hands-on lab exercise that accompanies this module, because each of the demos corresponds with a specific exercise from the hands-on lab. So we have steps where you can walk through each one of these things. Again, one of the reasons we don't do all of the individual steps in the screencast is because things change on a very rapid cadence in this new cloud world, and different dependencies change, version numbers change, maybe a couple of steps in screen caps are going to change as well in the hands-on lab. And so we keep the hands-on labs updated every couple months. But the videos would get out of date really quick if we tried to do that. So to save a little bit of time, we've just showed you the final solution, and we maintain the hands-on labs that you can take advantage of. I hope you got a lot out of this. There are a lot of other training modules associated with the Microsoft Graph that I'd recommend that you definitely take a look at. We've also got a couple additional links here that are at the end of the slides in the training module where you could use to learn more about this technology. So again, hope you got a lot out of this and you enjoyed this screencast. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch it.